Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you. My name is VashSky, your host for today's ceremonies, and with me is the what is it the spectral with the I came up with a line for this, but it's LW Ghost himself in the flesh in his ghostly presence. I'm not sure. LW, how you doing?
I'm never sure. Why should you be?
That's a very good point.
It's like any landing you can walk away from is a good one. My pilot friends say so. Same thing with this, because tomorrow I hit the grand old age of 72, and that's old.
Yeah, your birthday's in March, huh?
Yeah, St. Patty's Day. Haven't I ever told you all those long, boring stories about St. Patrick's Day? I'm sure I must have.
No, I don't think you filled me in on that.
Well, when I was being born, it was long before all this ultrasound, knowing what the sex of the baby is going to be. And I happened to be born at a very Catholic hospital. In those days, all the nurses were nuns. And my father said he's sitting in the waiting room, and they knew that if I was a boy, they were going to name me Dan. And he's waiting. And the nurse the nun walks through the waiting room singing, "Oh, Danny boy." And that's how he knew I was a boy. So...
Wow.
And then I've had to listen to that damn song ever since. And it's a terrible song.
Most
people don't know that "Oh, Danny Boy" in the song is dead. The song is the woman singing to his dead body on the battlefield after the battle. And there's like 17 verses. And I actually heard that there's a mezzo-soprano from New Zealand named Kirite Kanawa. And I saw her once at the Hollywood Bowl. And for an encore, a cappella, she sang all 17 verses. And it is maudlin in a way that only the Irish can be, because by about verse 14, 15, she's singing, "Oh, even though your head's over there and your legs are over here and your you-know-whats are on the other side of the field, I still love you, Danny boy," because he's in pieces. So anyway, nasty song. And then the other thing that happened when I was born was the first time they put an atom bomb test on television. And my father remembers sitting there in the waiting room watching a bomb go off in Nevada. And the other day, somebody sent me a picture from a hotel in Las Vegas in 1953, it was, where in the distance you could see the mushroom cloud going up from the people laying around the pool. And I thought, that's the day I was born, for God's sake. So anyway, enough about
what
me.
A day
What
indeed.
about you? Yeah, well.
Well, I was born in March as well, so that's kind of really interesting right there. I had no idea that was a thing. And look at this. Okay, look at everybody in the chat here. Spaceship
Thank you.
Mary White. We've got what is it? Wondering Womble, I believe, right there. Wishing you happy birthday, right there, Pamela.
Oh, gee.
And of course,
yeah, it's very nice of you all, and I appreciate it. But where the hell's the cake? You're supposed to bring cake.
Oh, we gotta get the cake. That's the next thing we gotta do.
Because I always tell all my friends, I said, my prescription: forget the candles, just eat lots of cake. So, because in my case, it would constitute a fire hazard. So, anyway, enough about all of that. But
absolutely. Well, I think
Eric Stratton says he was watching Tiger Woods win on Sunday when his first child was born. Well, okay, there you go. Tiger Woods or an atom bomb. I guess in some ways they resemble each other, or did, or might, or I don't know. Anyway, meanwhile, back in Hollywood. You
know what's going on in Hollywood, Lou?
Yeah, well, I picked some oddball stuff for our jukebox today. I don't know if anybody went and looked while they were waiting for the show to begin. Mm-hmm. There's this lovely lady who plays the cello, only she plays like 8 of them, 10 of them at a time, because it's doubled up like some of these a cappella people do. Mm-hmm. And her name is Samara Ginsberg, and there are 4 of her many selections down below. And it just shows you how wonderful the cello can be. The first one, which I really love, is DuckTales. And golly, it's wonderful to hear all those cellos going at the same time. And she arranges it, of course. And there's lots of others. So that's kind of fun for you all to enjoy as something a little different in our jukebox. There she is. And then that book that I told you about last week with the verbal, vocal histories that people gave to the Academy, all cut together like a conversation. I'm
Yeah.
still reading it, but I'm up to the modern day pretty much. And Spielberg tells a very funny story. He says somebody told him they were making a movie with Bernard Herrmann doing the music and said, "You want to come and meet him?" And he said, "Oh God, I'd love to." And he went over to where they were recording the score, and he went up to Herrmann, who he said was just sitting there on the floor and listening to the music cues that they put together. And he went up to him and he told him how fantastic he thought he was and how wonderful he thought he was and how he'd always admired him. And he said, Herrmann looked up at him and said, "Yeah, but you keep hiring that John Williams guy. Why not me?"
That's a good point.
And that night he died.
Oh, no.
So
because Steven Spielberg said no.
Yeah, well, it's got a million stories in there that are fantastic and very worth everybody's time. So I don't know. You had that
No.
cover.
I do. Let me see if I can bring it up real fast here. We have. It is, for folks who don't know, it's Hollywood: The Oral History.
And like I say, what they did is the Academy started recording everybody, and later the Directors Guild did, and the TV Academy stuff is really great too, because theirs are cross-referenced by the actors, but also by the show, so you can see everybody involved in a certain show. Anyway, they sit everybody down and said, tell us your story, and asked them questions. Well, these people went through all of those, about 400 of them, and cut them together like they were all in the same room having a conversation. So when they're talking about the studio system, they're all talking about it. And when they're talking about a particular picture or director or actor or whoever, it's really, really, really captivatingly good. And so I recommend it to you all. There, we got all of our housekeeping stuff out of the way. Now, what do you got for me, Vash?
Absolutely. Well, what do I got for you? Well, what took place last night in Hollywood.
What?
I don't know if you saw that. Well, it was a premiere.
Oh,
a premiere of a classic film that, a live action retelling of a classic film that came out in 1937.
Well, that's weird.
Yes, exactly. It was the premiere of Snow White. Let me see if I can bring it up here for you. Because what I want to do here is I don't even know if I could show Gal Gadot's dress, to be honest with you. I don't know what she's wearing. It's a little revealing, but
promise? Oh, show it.
Yeah. Here you go. This is from Variety here. You can see a very controlled event. You can see how it's completely encapsulated there. I mean, they have been having bad weather there. No lie there for sure. And this is outside the El Capitan on Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah.
And this is what's going on right there. Very controlled event, as one surmised or suspected. I think we heard a report both from Variety and THR that was saying that they were going to do a scaled back premiere, one in a very controlled environment. So I thought this was very, very interesting. Now, with the film coming out March 21st, technically you can't actually see it on March 20th, I thought I would, like to go with a little bit of a retrospective and talk about the significance of the original 1937 Snow White that was released to the Carthay Circle Theater there in December of that year, and later on achieving worldwide acclaim when it officially came out in 1938 to the public, that is, and it was the highest grossing film of that year, and, well, it didn't win an Oscar. It did win an honorary Oscar, custom creation there. Only 2 ever custom Oscars were ever created for anybody like this. So this was a huge honor right here. You can see that the lead Oscar and then 7 little Oscars next to it. I think that was
7 little Oscars cool. And how they grew. My goodness. And not one of them looks like Peter Dinklage. I think that's absolutely obscene.
It's not very inclusive. Yeah,
one of the things, by the way, in that book is everybody talks about what a pro Shirley Temple was at such a young age and how she was always on her marks and she always had her lines and she's like scared people with how professional she was on the set. So there you go. I actually, went to the Carthay Circle more than once. And then they tore it down to build an ugly building. Ugh. But it was kind of off the beaten track. It was in its own little corner of the West Side, not near any restaurants or shops or anything else. But you can see the reproduction, of course, at the Disney park. But it was a pretty special theater. I have somewhere in my boxes of stuff that my mother said, "You take these. I don't want to hold on to them." All the pictures of the family stuff of my father and I going to see Around the World in 80 Days there. And it
Oh.
was famous because they made this curtain just for the movie. That, if you remember Around the World in 80 Days, that those animations of Passepartout and Phileas Fogg and Aisha, the penny farthing bike and the top hat with the stopwatch and the veil, and they had them running up and down in gold embroidery on this beautiful red velvet curtain. And that curtain eventually, I think, wound up in Debbie Reynolds' collection. And I don't know where it is now. But anyway, it was a great theater. And my father and I, for some reason, went to go see the Around the World in 80 Days. And I have this photograph of the two of us, and I'm a little guy. I don't know how old I was, but and we're both wearing identical black suits and red ties. We kind of look like, I don't know, well, Men in Black, sort of. But anyhow, it was a fantastic theater. And then they knocked it down and put up this terrible, ugly 4 or 5 story, sort of looked like something from the old Kenner. What was it? Was it Kenner? Erector set, the panel and girder sets for a headquarters for National General Theaters. So anyway. Yeah. But
Terrible.
But the original Snow White did premiere there with a great red carpet. And you have to remember, everybody, and I mean everybody in the business, thought it was Walt's folly.
Yes.
They said you will never, ever, ever get human beings to give a damn about cartoons enough to laugh, to cry, to feel emotions. And by God, people did, because it was so well done.
It was so well done. It blew the industry entirely away.
Even if it was about a stalker and a misogynist and
yes.
Weird,
terrible.
Weird,
right? But you're right about that. I mean, people were unsure whether or not somebody could endure an animated film. And they were even saying like, "Oh, wait, you're going to damage your eyes if you look at color images like that for the length of time that an animated."
And you also have to remember that these animated, that one and all the others, it took 3 or 4 years to make, as opposed to a feature film being shot in 3 or 4 months, even with a few months of prep and a few months of post. So it was a much bigger commitment of time and energy than any straight ahead feature film.
Right.
Yes.
And the animation quality, I just saw it a couple days ago, and it really does hold up quite well. I mean, it's just a remarkable piece, and how they were able to animate this in the way that they were able to. It's just absolutely.
And of course,
remarkable.
they shot figure references with people.
Yes.
They didn't have red tennis balls on them on a blue green screen, but they did shoot that to get the smoothness of the motion right.
Yeah.
And anyway,
they also Walt Disney actually sent his animators, which, by the way, I mean, ballooned up in staff. I think it started out with maybe less than 100, and it ballooned up to like maybe 600 by the end of production. This film here was only budgeted originally for $250,000, and it crept up to just shy of 1.5. So 1.5 million.
And that's 19 nothing dollars. Now it's, what would that be? God only knows. But I bet it wouldn't be as much as the current Snow White.
It does not know anywhere close to the current Snow White there, that's for sure. But I mean, that's kind of why they were saying it was Walt's folly, right? Because he had poured so much of the company's, at that time, resources into this, or the studio's resources into this.
Well, and that's interesting, because I remember when I attended the press premiere of Fantasmic at Disneyland, and people asked, the big question for Eisner then was, what about the, second gate, and what are they going to do with the strawberry field and all the rest of that stuff? And he said, Walt was a genius, and we all love and admire him. But I'm in a totally different position. Walt could put it all on the line because basically he had nothing to lose comparatively. I have to preserve what we've got before I can venture something further. So I'm in a different position. And he made a good point. Not that Walt was, totally profligate, because people give the impression that, oh, gee, if it hadn't been for Roy, he would have spent the farm. But, I mean, they tell the famous story about Roy on opening day at Disneyland. You know that story, right? Where they were in this sort of trailer out where the parking lot is. And not the opening day with the press and everything, but the next day when real people were going to come.
Right.
And the park's supposed to open at 9, and they're sitting there at 8:30, and there's nobody there. And at 9, there's nobody there. And about 9:15, there's nobody there. And Roy is sitting there going, oh, God, we just threw away the company and we killed ourselves. And about 9:45, this kid comes running into Roy's office and says, Mr. Disney, we got a big problem. He says, what? He says, well, people have been jammed up on the highway getting here, and now they're all getting here, and their kids have to pee, and they're peeing all over the parking lot. And Roy smiled and said, let them pee. At least they were there. He smiled and said, just let them pee, kid.
Yeah.
So,
well, I know Roy was very hesitant about the idea. I mean, he was like, oh, this could really go south on us pretty fast. I mean, you got Disney cashing out his life insurance policy to pay for the Mark Twain. You've got all the company's resources invested into Disneyland in kind of this very pseudo way where it's kind of Walt's thing, but it's using.
There was no CAD cam. There was no, they tell the story about the Twain.
Sure.
The hull and the engine and everything was built by Todd Shipyards, which is a big shipyard down in San Pedro in LA. But the superstructure was built on the soundstage at the studio, and they trucked them both to the park and put them together there for the first time. So nobody really knew what the capacity was of how many people could get on. And they loaded it up, and they went around the rivers, and everything was swell. But when they started to approach the dock, everybody said, oh, it's ending, and went over to one side, and they damn near capsized it. The deck started going underwater, and they counted people as they got off. And when it leveled out again, then they counted everybody and said, okay, now we know. Trial and error. Now we know the capacity of what we can do. And it was that kind of a fly by the seat of your pants thing, because that's the way the world was. So all the more for so-called experts to tell Walt about Snow White that he was crazy and it's not going to work. So,
yeah.
And now, of course, they want to rip the river out because they know best, right?
Of course they know best. Yeah. No, I mean, it's by that time, I think Roy, his brother, was a little bit like, okay, like I'll go with you. I mean, this is out there, but I'll go with you, because he had proven himself time and time again, taking big risks for the studio and it paying off. Disneyland was a very big risk, but Snow White, yeah, when you're talking, we want to create the first animated film. I mean, I don't think they knew just what they were getting into, and especially to Walt's degree of quality that he would imbue into these pictures. It's just insane. We're talking, millions of individual frames.
Well, they were willing to throw things out and start over again if it didn't work. I mean, they talk about, I guess the one that they supposedly totally threw out a bunch of was Alice in Wonderland. They just wasn't working, and they threw a bunch of it out and started over again. And it was the only one that really didn't make money in its first run. It eventually did. But Walt always talked about that weird little girl and how he never should have done it, because it didn't make money from the moment that it was out there like the others did. But, of course, see, part of the beauty of it was, I don't know, I've never read the original or seen the story of Snow White. But I don't remember if the dwarves, until Disney did it, were actually called by their personalities as names, Dopey, Sleepy, Grumpy. And that helps, because it helps the audience know what they're about, but it also helps the animator to, how do I draw this guy? Well, if he's dopey, I make him dopey. And if he's, that's... It was Walt's storytelling genius to do that kind of thing.
Yes.
We don't want to have, the problem with any movie, animated, not animated, is exposition. Is how do you get to the point where the plot is gone and the emotion takes over? And with this, you were there from the first moment. You were.
I think the amount of I think realism that they imbued into the characters themselves, having them have weight, having them really well animated, having the backgrounds be as amazing as they were, utilizing new techniques. Obviously, you have the multi-plane camera and so forth, and those techniques in order to give depth of field and so forth. There's a nice spinning effect with the evil queen, in that you have like a foreground, a background, queen in between. It just spins like this, and it really gives the illusion of that effect right there to make it as realistic as possible as they could back in 1937. I think it really brought you into that world in a way that no film was really doing at the time. I mean, if you look at let's say 37 cartoons here. Let me see if I can bring some of those up. You didn't get this kind of quality, especially from something that was feature length at the time. Let me see here.
We have an interesting, lovely super chat from Mary White talking about the adjustment for inflation of how much it's made.
Yes, let's go ahead and go over that right now. Mary White with $5. Fun trivia fact: adjusted for inflation, Snow White remains the highest grossing 2D animated film of all time. Estimated gross of $1.546 billion. Now, keep the important thing about that figure is, I think total it's like 418 million, but that's, it's been re-released multiple times, right? I think
right. And of course, the studio, long before Disney Plus was a gleam in Bob's eye.
Yeah.
The studio used to put all the classic films on a 7-year schedule, long before they were ever available on home video or anything else, which was every 7 years they'd re-release them. Because I don't know how they came up with 7 years, if it was just a lucky number or whatever, but it turned out to be the right interval where a next generation was ready to see them. Go ahead.
I have a story.
Yes. Well, tell us.
Well, okay, so the original comes out in 1937, right? And then during World War II, Walt's like, okay, well, we can't really produce the films that we could during the non-war years, because half my boys went to war, and the other half are being occupied by the military, and we're doing all these pictures for them and so forth. And it's like, we need to really bring some cash in. Well, let's go ahead and put Snow White out. That was about 1944, 1945, and that's where your 7 years comes in.
You also have to remember that the international market disappeared, vaporized.
Exactly.
Because the U.S. studios used to sell their movies in Germany and in Italy and every place all over Europe, and suddenly they couldn't. So, which is funny, because that led people like the very young Sergio Leone, who loved American movies, and that drought is what led them to looking into, oh, hey, we could make a Western after the war. So, anyway.
Right. So that's kind of like where you get your cadence, and I was like, okay, well, let's just follow this through the course of time here, and that's where you started the putting pictures back on that 7-year time span. But yeah, you're right. The international market was really dried up there, and so the Snow White not only saved this, built the studio, but saved it as well. So it just kept on grossing money and revenue for the company when it desperately needed it. And that's pretty great stuff right there. So I think the initial run, I think you're talking like a little over $6 million at the box office, which, with a budget of 1.5, that's pretty darn good. Even, definitely back then. And then as it accrues, I mean, $418 million total. Yeah, that's a huge amount over those years, and especially adjusted for inflation and so forth. So
weird. That's all.
Weird. Yeah, let's go ahead and tear it all down, because it's not PC.
Well, what I found funny was that story recently about this limited premiere bit where they weren't allowing interviews was they brought up the whole controversy about the what would we call them, the 7 dirty hippie baristas or whatever that got revealed. And, no, we always intended to do it with the same kind of style as the 1930s movie. The one that was outdated and irrelevant and
right.
You can't have it both ways, guys.
You can't.
And in fact, in our back channels, I was discussing earlier with let's see, let me find the discussion. Oh, with Ron Bradley, because he put up a thing about the cancellation and what would it cost because they didn't do the premiere. And I said, it's a very interesting calculation to make. Would the PR value of a real premiere be canceled box office wise by A, the revulsion if Rachel says something awful? But you always have to remember, B, the enlightenment about her past awfulness. There's still a lot of people out there who know nothing about this controversy. But every time she gets mentioned, it gets repeated and people go, I didn't know that. Just like when the whole beginnings of the feelings against Disney began, people had no clue that ESPN was Disney and that there was part of their bundle that they were paying the cable people for. Mm-hmm. And the people that suddenly get enlightened by these revelations, there's a whole new generation of audience out there that doesn't watch our channels and doesn't pay attention to Hollywood and just wants to be entertained. But when they find out, hell hath no fury like a Disney fan scorned. And there's certainly, if they don't know anything else and they just, we're making our routine trip to Disney World. And what's that pile of dirt where the river used to be?
Right.
They sure as heck go and find out. You know, yep. you can't, you can run, but you can't hide.
You can run, but you can't hide. There you go. Hopefully that's appropriate there, appropriate frame. Thank you so much, Mary White, for.
And I see Liam McNeil is mentioning, and then we haven't even considered all the merchandise based on Snow White over the years.
Yep.
Even in days when there were no custom popcorn buckets. Can you imagine a time before the primeval world when that was true? My God.
Oh my goodness gracious! That is. Let's talk about that in just a second here. Go and Shogi with the $5 IMO. Or in my opinion, the only other movie that can rival Snow White in the command of color is Lilo and Stitch. Colors pop off the screen to inspire and awe. Yeah, you got those watercolor backgrounds there, which is a really interesting look for that film. The colors really do stand out against them.
And say golly, that trailer for the live action movie is encouraging, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
If you haven't seen, people go search for the new trailer for the live action Lilo and Stitch, and by golly, it's good. People say we never say anything's good about Disney anymore. Well, that sure as heck is. It's exciting. It's encouraging. I want to see it.
It's really, really good.
Especially considering how completely misguided the Stitch attraction was. That they took this character that everybody thought was cute and wonderful and turned it into this thing dripping saliva on you or whatever it was inside that spook house in the middle of Tomorrowland.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, you got an empty space, you fill it, or at least that's what Disney used to do, which is really interesting.
Well, they should consult people who know better, like our own Staccato DDS, who knows how to fill this empty space. But anyway, with gold rather than dross. Anyway.
With colors as well. I mean, the start of the
Thank you, Go and Shogi, for the super chat. I don't know if you said thank you, but I'm going to say
thank you. No, yeah, of course. We thank everybody. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for modding as well.
Yes.
But the start of the Mary Blair films, I would say, the start of the kind of the Silver Age, I believe is what they call it, with like Cinderella, for example, Peter Pan, all of those colors really, really pop out. If you put them side by side to Snow White, as impressive as it is, it definitely follows like Claude Coetzee style. It takes a lot of inspiration from the backgrounds, and it's a little bit more brown, let's say, but those colors really pop with the Silver Age. So I've always admired that. Oh, we have another super chat as well. We have a Storm Weaver. Wait a minute, hang on here. Storm Weaver. Got to do it right. With the
any relation to Doodles Weaver?
Maybe.
Bomb. Anyway,
hi, Vash and the LW Ghost. All the best to you and yours. Thanks for all the great work. Have a good afternoon. We'll have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I always feel like saying thank you very much, and I hope we pass the audition. But,
Yes. But merchandise, as was just before, I believe. Let me go ahead and get that tweet up on the screen, or not tweet, but comment here. Yeah, I mean, super super important to realize that as well. A lot of the money made from the Walt Disney Company now. And maybe, they either make up for some of that budget loss with the merchandise, or it just catapults their overall earnings into the stratosphere. And
well, let me say one more thing about merchandise.
Please.
The original film is 1930. What was it? I'm sorry, 7, 8.
I think 37. Yep.
Can you think, what is that till now? How many years?
Let's
Somebody
go
do the
ahead
math.
and
I'm bored.
find
But
out.
anyway, all I'm going to say is, whatever the hottest merchandise movie is today, do you think they'll still be selling merch from it that many years later? I doubt it.
Yeah, I see. That's the thing, and that's why 88 years, by the way, just about
Yeah,
just
80.
shy of
Well,
88.
God, that's older than I am.
Right?
Yeah. And
So
that's old. Believe me, that's old.
it's up there. It's
but
up
I'm
there.
just saying, something that persistent, you should think twice before you diss it, dummies.
Right. Right.
It must have had, even if you don't get it, you say, well, I don't personally get it, but I guess a lot of people do. And you stop there. But no, weird.
This is also why, and maybe you can disagree with me, Lou, but this is also why I kind of have a problem a little bit with the Academy and how it views animated films.
Oh, well.
This really should have won the Oscar there. It did not, because it is animated. But I mean, think about any other film that came out in 1937, 1938. Can you even
good question.
name
What
them?
were the movies? Let's see.
See, that's the thing. Let's go ahead and look them up. But it's like this film has endured, and several times. I mean, there's, even if we do find a film that's very, very good, can you necessarily release it in theaters and be as relevant as it was before? I don't think so.
Well, let's see. What were the top films of 1938? Holiday, George Cukor, Audrey Hepburn, and Cary Grant. You Can't Take It With You, Frank Capra, Jean Arthur, James Stewart, Lionel Barrymore. Bringing Up Baby, Howard Hawks, directing Catherine. Yeah, okay. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Now that's interesting, because finally we have what you might call a kids or family movie with nobody of fame in it. Boys Town, Spencer and Mickey Rooney, and Christmas Carol with Reginald Owen. That was like the 1938 version. Okay. A Slight Case of Murder with Edward G. Robinson. Angels with Dirty Faces. A priest tries to stop a gangster from corrupting a group of street kids. Jimmy Cagney, Pat O'Brien, and Humphrey Bogart, directed by Michael Curtiz. Wow. Hitchcock, The Lady Vanishes. Let's see. Clark Gable, Myrna Loy, Walter Pidgeon in Too Hot to Handle. Ginger Rogers, Barbara Stanwyck. The Amazing Dr. Clitterhouse. Boy, there's a title to reckon with. Edward G. Robinson, Humphrey Bogart, and Claire Trevor.
Don't say
that.
that.
Brilliant Park Avenue doctor becomes a criminal in order to do research into the criminal mind. Well, that makes sense, I guess.
So, Wizard of Oz.
Mr. Moto's Gamble with Peter Lorre, Key Luke. Yeah, well. Anyway, those were some of the great movies of that era. Yeah.
Right. So you have Wizard of Oz that comes out in 1939, right? That's definitely up there. Not gonna take anything away from Wizard of Oz. Definitely up there. And then you have also too It's a Wonderful Life that comes out.
And by the way, for that book that I was touting, nobody wanted to make The Wizard of Oz.
Right.
Mervyn LeRoy said, I've wanted to see this since I read it as a kid. I want to make the movie. They all said, come on, that's not going to work. And of course, they kept handing it off to different directors during the making of the movie because they had other things they'd rather do. But somehow the audience said otherwise. So there you go.
Sure. No, the Wizard of Oz, and the studios have gone back to that well, and historically haven't been very successful. I can think of like The Return to Oz, for example, The Wiz.
Oh yeah, well, The
Oz
Wiz
the Great
did
and Powerful.
okay, I think, but that wasn't about the story. That was about the stars and the music. So there you go.
And then that you really don't have a really successful Wizard of Oz film until I would say probably Wicked here most recently.
Yeah, and as I keep saying, it remains to be seen to me whether part 2 a year from now will do anything close to as well.
Right.
I think that's and again, it wasn't just that they took The Wizard of Oz; it was that they took a successful theatrical interpretation of it that's been running for 20 years, one way or another.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they had that going for it too. I'm not knocking the movie or the story. I'm just saying it's not the same kettle of fish, as they say. Anyway.
It certainly wasn't the cinematography. Come on, why is it so flat? Ugh. Terrible.
Yeah.
It's a Wonderful Life, 1946. Obviously you're talking about a decade after that. But even It's a Wonderful Life, you see, wasn't really appreciated in its time. I think it didn't do all that well at the box office. I can't remember exactly. But it wasn't until later, much later, that everybody kind of truly it had a budget of $3.18 million and a box office of $3.3 million. So on that hand, you can say that was a stunning failure right there. But now we recognize it as one of the best classics of all time there. And certainly one of the best Christmas movies.
Well, plus remember, they didn't throw anything away. As one of the things the genre guys, our very first show was Forbidden Planet, and that garden of alien plants that happens on the planet there, it was left over from Munchkin Land. They recycled those sets. And of course, the uniforms that they made for Forbidden Planet showed up in probably 20, 30 sci-fi movies over the years. So, and of course, Robbie the Robot became Danger Will Robinson. Same idea, anyway. So,
it's quite something. But I think Snow White, you put it on. And I would say, I think you put it on for the kiddos. You might, you might get away with saying that, this is like a 20-year-old film rather than a 88-year-old film. I mean, that's just kinda...
but see, the concept of 20 years and 88 years to your kids today is irrelevant. I mean,
sure, that's fair point.
And you also have to. One of the things that book once again brings out is that going to the movies was it. There was no home video, there was no television, there was radio. Right. But the point was that the movies sometimes changed 2 or 3 times a week at your local movie house. And if you didn't go see Casablanca or you didn't go see The Wizard of Oz, it was gone. You never imagined that you would have a chance to see it again. It was a very short time temporal piece of entertainment. Doesn't make it any less valuable, but it's a different mentality, a different concept.
Sure. Yeah, and when Gone with the Wind was out of theaters, that was it. It was gone. But Snow White,
exactly.
It was one of the only films, because it was so successful and everybody wanted a piece of this thing. It was one of the only ones, especially for its time, to get to be brought back into theaters that same year.
Yeah,
which was absolutely stunning. I was just saying that this was so ahead of its
time. And that's not because they had. Now we have all this polling and all this market research. It's because the theater owners knew from talking to their customers, people wanted to see it and missed it, or wanted to see it again. And they demanded it. Demanded it.
They did. And it was truly remarkable.
And now we have, that was one of the things that happened in the last year here on our channels that just blew my mind. Mm-hmm. When somebody that Pro knew who had a theater up in North Dakota, South Dakota, someplace, said people called in about a Disney movie to ask if it was safe to take their kids. Talk to the manager of the local theater. The very idea that anybody would have that doubt, boy, that's a sea change. That's a sea change and a half.
Yes,
it really. And is. if you're even slightly less arrogant, narcissistic, I can do no wrong, and you're Bob Iger and you know about that, and he would have to know. Don't you say, hey, wait. Everybody pause and let's think about what we're doing here. But no, it's like, well, we're doing what we're doing and you'll just follow along because we're Disney and you must. Yeah, right.
That's
And when you build so much around the concept of repeated viewing and repeated exposures, I mean, look, the entire DVC product is about you're going to come every year anyway. You might as well come to a place that has a kitchen and your own thing and save money.
right.
And if they haven't got that, they haven't got anything.
Yep.
So, yeah. Anyway,
That's
I could go on
that's
about
the only
that.
that's the only way that these things work, right? Is for Walt Disney World, it's people want to come back year over year, especially when you have new attractions. And when you have a lull there, that might be a little bit difficult in order to get in order to sell DVCs and so forth and get people to come back every single year with 4-quadrant pictures. The only way this works is that people everybody wants to go and everybody feels that they can go. So when you put out a 4-quadrant film with a 4-quadrant budget and people are like unsure on whether they should go, that's a big problem. And that's why you're seeing, I think, a lot of these.
And it translates to every other part of the business. I mean,
Exactly.
it's all
Yep.
well and good that you have this fantastic cruise line that everybody thinks is great, even if it is expensive. But what you are growing is the audience for cruises in general. And when somebody comes along with something that is perceived as having equal quality without all the political baggage, and it isn't as expensive, you've just created an audience for your competition, which is what's happening with Epic and Universal versus Disney. I mean,
Right.
like I keep saying, I think when the history of all this is written, one of the biggest, insanely stupid things they ever did was get rid of that bus ride.
Yeah.
The Magical
The
Express.
Magical Express.
Because if they aren't stuck on your property, they might go look at something else. And I
Right.
keep telling people, people are saying, well, they're holding their trip because they want to go see Epic Universe. Most of the people who want to go see Epic Universe who are excited by it because they're theme park people and they go to Disney normally, but they've never seen Islands or the original park or Volcano Bay either. So this idea that Universal's selling a 3-day trip with 1 day at the new park, all 3 days are new to most of those people. They're brand
Exactly.
new.
Yep. Yep.
And when they suddenly say, God, they've got all this, and I get the early magic hoo-ha just by staying in their hotel, and I get the line jumping by buying a package, and I save, and the hotel is $150. Where's this been all my life? Answer: what is it? 8 miles up by 4.
Well,
It's just.
No,
And like I keep saying about the Frisco Park is going to grow the audience for the Orlando Park, because it's going to have. When I heard they were doing, SpongeBob and all that, fine. But when they said they were doing Jurassic at this kids park, I thought that's a scary thing. Not the way they're doing it there. They're going to breed you from happy, lovey dinosaurs to the ones that'll bite your head off or
exactly.
whatever.
No, and that's what some Universal creative executives have said. They said, look.
By the way, did you see what just opened in the same complex where the Vegas Halloween Horror Universal Spectacular is going to be? A John Wick escape room.
Yes, I saw that. I want to see
Continental,
that
and I'm
so
going,
badly.
oh yeah, man, I would go to that.
Oh, I want to see that. I saw that. I was like, what? I didn't even know this was opening.
I didn't either. I didn't hear anything about it, but
I gotta see that. Yeah,
the
they were talking
Continental
about that
Las
in number
Vegas,
5s
right?
in production, so or developed.
In that same complex. And
Right.
I will point something out about that.
Area
complex.
15 or Area 51.
Yeah. No hotel rooms.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Why
No
would you- why would
gambling,
you
as
do
far
that?
as I know. Just attraction. Imagine if just attraction would draw, the great Star Trek thing at the Hilton would still be there. And it was great. It was really, really great. But it didn't draw gamblers, so they got rid of it.
There you go.
So
I think if you have one complex though, with all these different, people kind of throwing in their lot
well,
there.
even if you
I think
go,
it's much more
you go
successful.
because you want to go to the Universal horror thing, but you see the other things that are there, and you say, "Well, tomorrow night, let's come back and check that out."
Well, that was the thing. Universal executives, they were like, no, we're putting this out here, and that way people can graduate, let's say, to our larger experiences over in Orlando and so forth.
Speaking of Universal executives, should we talk about that story I showed you just before
I
we
think
began?
we should. I think we should.
Something has happened that's very, very strange, people. Very unusual. These companies, they swap executives. I think Disney just recently changed who's in charge at Disney Springs or whatever. But Universal announced a COO for, quote, the Pacific Rim. And that means Japan, China, and Universal Hollywood as one regional control for the COO.
That's interesting.
The Ring of Fire, right?
Right. Universal Parks News today. This by Jamie Rowland. Leadership changes announced for Universal Studios Japan.
See, they're making a big deal. Oh, it's Japan, Japan, Japan. But when you read into the details, keep going.
Yep. Starting on, June 1st, 2025. This by J.L. Bonnier is going to be the Bonner? They spell his name different ways. So thanks for that. He's being promoted from his current position of Universal Studios Japan as President CEO to the position of President COO Pacific Rim, where he will oversee the teams and overall operations of Universal Studios Japan, Beijing, and Universal Studios Hollywood. Now that's very interesting because we know Beijing is going through an incredible growth spurt as the Chinese government, they want their parks big and bold, so they're throwing their lot in with that.
But even while their economy is dying and people can't afford to go. But aside from that,
sure. Besides the point.
But hey, we'll give you a free vacation right next to the Disney park.
Exactly. Yeah. Shanghai. Ooh. But Universal Studios Hollywood is going through a growth spurt of its own. And in fact, I think Theme Park Wizard on his channel detailed a big scoop that he was able to find through the permitting process that a lot of those buildings back there, I don't know if you saw, Lou,
no. Show me.
So the let me see if I can pull this up here. And
because I spent those many years laboring in the studios of Universal Hollywood, and those were the days.
I'm jealous.
used to take lunch break in the park, so.
Yeah, sure. Okay, let's see here. Let me go ahead and put this into 3D view for you all, and that way we can detail this. Because I think this is really interesting, and it does have to deal with Hollywood because, well, it's a backlot. So let's see here. Is that satellite? Is that globe blue? Okay. So here you go. That is Universal Studios Hollywood. Let me go ahead and get an angle on that. You can see that's the upper lot right there, the upper portion of the theme park. Down below is where you have the production facilities and production studios and so forth. You got that new campus I just opened. Well, Wizard was able to find out that this area here, north of Transformers, north of Mummy right here, you still have a bank of sound stages right here. And he was able to find out that these buildings that you see in the upper reaches here on the property line, those have been given the green light to be effectively relocated according to some permit filings that he found. The numbers match up to what these buildings previously housed. So that is really, really interesting. If we go over here,
by the way, just to give people a sense of scale, go back to where you just were.
Yes.
Stage 14. Oops, sorry about that noise.
No, you're fine.
Right up there on the left where there's a purple thing, stage 14.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's where American Gladiator was.
Oh,
that's how big that is. That's where the Hindenburg model stuff was done. That's one of the two big stages at Universal. So it just gives people a sense of size and scale. Okay.
Right. Now, stage 14 might stay, but pretty much we're talking everything here, everything above basically stage 16, 17, 20, 22. When I understand, all of that has been the real estate that or the buildings and infrastructure that has been built can replace what's here. So they can relocate essentially, right? Because we've seen a lot of this. If you look over here on like Courthouse Square, for example, those sound stages right there with the those
are the new ones,
solar,
yeah.
Those are the new ones, and those were meant to take up a lot of the space that they lost for Super Nintendo World, for example. Well, those can also be sound stages that'll make up for those sound stages right behind Mummy. If you look over here, if you look at just beyond Earthquake, right? So this is the Earthquake section of the studio tram tour that people might be familiar with, you have this building over on Denver Street. This bank, this building or structures or what is a grouping of structures is actually some of the oldest on this lot.
Yeah.
These were like very, very original fronts here that you would use for the Western sets. Those have been demolished. And the building that's being put up in its place is one of those facilities that we just saw on the other side of the lot. So they're doing a lot to move as many of these structures as possible so that they can open all of this back up. And, maybe Mummy, gets the axe as a result. So it's very interesting that you have a leadership change that includes an executive that will be overseeing not one, but two parks that are going to be going through a growth spurt at this time.
Right. Very
Interesting indeed. Also, too, I don't mean to sidetrack here, but, I like to bring up a little bit of history when I can. This is a bad photo, but I got to find a higher quality one for you guys. But you can see right here, that's Walt Disney, and next to him is Shirley Temple.
Yes,
that's
it is.
A very older Shirley Temple. This would have been
Shirley Temple Black, as she then was, because she got married.
Yes, you're right. 57, 58, something like that. But this was for the opening of the castle walkthrough at Media Castle at Disneyland.
And we know the story about that, of course, was that they were looking for where can we put more stuff because Disneyland is short of attractions. Mm-hmm. And Walt and Herbie Ryman and a couple of the other guys wandered through all this empty, what was then just, wood and tar paper. Yeah. But it turns out that during the construction of Disneyland, a group of feral cats had taken up residence inside there. Mm-hmm. And Herbie Ryman was famous for wearing what was known in those days as an ice cream suit, this white suit. And when they came out, everybody looked at him and said, Herbie, your suit is gray. It was fleas from the feral cats that had completely covered his body. And so that was an itchy day at Disneyland. But
that's anyway. No good right there.
Yeah.
That's no good. But yeah, they cleared out those cats out there and they built the walkthrough. And then it was closed for many years following 9/11, which was very, very sad. But Tony Baxter was able to convince the then president at the time to open it back up and restore it to a very similar state as it existed before, back in Shirley Temple's day right there. So that is really, really cool, awesome stuff. So, you got two times that Shirley Temple ran into Walt Disney in a very notable fashion there. Very, very cool. Let's see here. I was going to mention something else. Oh, yes, you mentioned Epic Universe and how people coming to that park, right, they're going to be encouraged to stay for 3 days, let's say.
Somebody in our chat named Spaceship Ears has the line, Lilo and Itch.
Lilo and Itch. That's great. That's fantastic.
Sam Spurgeon says my first quote drink was a Shirley Temple. Well, a lot of people. A Shirley Temple was basically 7-Up and grenadine. It looked like a cocktail, but it wasn't. Mm-hmm. It's funny how people complained about those candy cigarettes because, you're encouraging kids to smoke, but they never complained about the Shirley Temple. I guess the booze lobby was stronger than the
tobacco lobby.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Now it's interesting. You mentioned Epic Universe, and you mentioned how people will essentially discover the rest of the Universal parks as they buy into like a 1 day, 3 day, or 5 day pass in order to get access to Epic Universe. By the way, single day tickets are available, but I think the value is definitely skewed towards those longer stays. Well, it's interesting because that effect happened with Islands of Adventure back when the Wizarding World of Harry Potter opened in that theme park in 2010. At that point, Comcast was just acquiring the company. But at that point, Universal didn't really fully own Islands of Adventure. They had to sell out a lot of its stake because that park really didn't do all that well. But when people discovered it through Wizarding World, it was like, whoa, wait a minute, you got Jurassic Park over here, you got Lost Continent, this is a superhero island, this is great, this is fantastic, this is wonderful. Well, that park had a resurgence and a reawakening, let's say, and now that's one of the lead parks out there at that resort. I think a similar thing will happen, but with the entire resort when people actually recognize Epic Universe for as great of a theme park as we all think it will be, but also to revisit some of those old ones that maybe they hadn't before.
Right. They and by the way, there's been an interesting trend in the last 2 weeks, I would say. I have a separate account that does nothing but look for, theme park and studio related news stories. We've seen all the marketing of Epic, of course, through Universal and through all the various theme park sites. Suddenly, the straight ahead travel sites, people who don't care so much about theme parks, are suddenly doing stories on Epic Universe and on the hotels. Also, I noticed, who just did a big coverage about the Dark Universe and about Vegas Halloween haunts, whatever? Fangoria. The monster movie magazine website, Fangoria, did. Really? So the point is that Universal realizes, well, wait, we don't just need WDW Today or us to talk about it. We need Travel and Leisure to talk about it. Oh, hey, wait, you're going to show the one with my name on it, aren't
you? Which one?
Which is the one where it's a diner outside and it's LEW'S Diner.
Oh, yes. Okay, let me see if I can find that one.
But yeah, look at these are just such amazing clips.
Yeah.
They just
it's
if you watch that and you don't want to go, where do you want to go?
Exactly. That's the thing, right? It's like are people necessarily going to go to Disney, which maybe they have before, or if you're somebody that only comes out maybe 10, 20 years, or maybe it's your first time ever, are you going to go to the place that's been around for 50 years, or are you going to go to the brand new place that is said to be the most technologically advanced theme park in the world? That's where the dollars get really, really interesting.
Well, listen, it is absolutely the most technologically advanced, but that's not the selling point to most people. It's new, it's fun, it's different, it's
right, and it features exciting. Your favorite IP.
Yeah, well, maybe, but like I said, what was this? Was our show or somebody's show just recently? I mentioned, I said, when I first saw all this, I had zero, nada familiarity with Isle of Berk and those movies. So I watched them. And now I know what they are. And it looked like fun. You know what I mean? And it just, in other words, it circles around on itself as far as growing new audiences is concerned.
Yep.
And the fact that they committed to the family suites at the Helios are all Isle of Berk. They're not Nintendo and they're not Harry Potter and they're not, so they knew which one to sell, if you see what I mean. It's just, they're awfully damn smart. And like I'm saying, these coverages that are happening in straight ahead travel and straight ahead travel, press, and websites instead of theme park related ones are coming online at just the right time. They're coming online now in March for saying to people, hey, August, September, October, you going to go to the Bahamas again, or maybe you want to try something different?
Exactly.
Or you're going to go, and that's who the competition is. It always reminds me years and years and years and years ago, there was a great story in an online magazine or onboard magazine, one of the airlines that I read, interviewing the head of marketing for Rolls-Royce.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, we don't consider our competition to be other cars. We consider our competition to be vacation homes and yachts. Right. And by the way, I don't know if you've seen this guy, Rory, who's this marketing genius who's all over the internet, fat British guy who's got some wonderful insights. And he talked about that. And he said, Rolls-Royce and Lamborghini and all the high-end cars decided to stop showing their cars at car shows. Because if you were at a car show, you were the $400,000 car and you were totally like beyond the budget of 99% of the people who were there to see the, granted expensive, but the Mustangs and the whatevers. They started putting them at yacht shows and at big luxury item, things like that. Because, hey, if you weren't going to buy a $5 million yacht, maybe you'd buy a $400,000 car as a kind of a consolation prize to yourself. It's understanding your place within the vast market of choices that Universal is doing so well.
Right.
And that Disney's arrogance or stupidity or both has totally precluded them from.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think this will wrap this story up quite nicely. The way I've heard it is Disney doesn't consider its competition to be Universal, at least in Southern California. Now, you might think, oh, that's a little weird because aren't they both theme park related, just like you said with cars. Disney was like, well, we consider our competition to be more like Vegas, right? Especially for domestic and international tourists. Well, guess who's setting up in Vegas? Universal. So,
yeah. Although there are a lot of rumors going on, they're going to tear down Circus. And there's a lot of rumors that Disney is going to buy that property and do something with it. But
if they buy up that property, well, we'll have to have another Vegas special here on
but that's what, 3 years down the road if they started tomorrow. And it's gambling. And if that happens, you can look for casinos or slot machines on all the Disney ships because they'll have to. And they've already got the tie-in with the gambling with, sports. So
are you telling me that might be another Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser situation?
What's funny, if they bought was it on Buck Rogers where there was this kind of casino planet that they went to for recreation? If they bought that and changed the theming to that at Disney World, they might be able to redo the Galactic Star Cruiser as the or even on the Jetsons. Wasn't there one with the Jupiter Gin, Planet Poker? They had all these I don't know. I know that they could probably find a better use than an office building.
Right.
Boy, what a great office that is. A cubicle with no windows. It leaves you this chilling challenge to find a way out.
Well, but to all those executives who bankrolled that whole exhibition there, even though you're converting it to offices, just realize, let me see if I have the soundbite here for it. Let me see. Hang on. Oh, come on, I just had it. What? Where'd it go? Let's see. Hang on. I got it. It's gonna be worth it, guys, I swear.
There's no turning back now.
No turning back now. That $1 billion spent.
But when when it comes to the Galactic Star Cruiser, there's always this wisdom from another famous IP.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
There you go.
So,
I love that. That's a perfect way to end the show. Lou!
Oh, golly. How time flew when we were having fun.
Oh, we were having so much fun, yeah. But I have
first of all, give them the email so they can send us questions.
Yes. Let's go ahead and do that right now. So let's see here. Whoop. Where are we at? Come on, banners. Okay, there we go. It's going to be at T3P online at yahoo.com. Definitely check us out and send us your emails with your questions for Lou or anything else you want to send us, and maybe we can feature it on the show right there and create loads of discussion amongst ourselves. And
in spite of what I said earlier, don't send cake. It'll spoil through the internet. Or even cake recipes, because I could make my own. But anyway, you asked, what am I doing lately? Tonight, we are recording a double header for the Genre Guys because we have to cover a week when I'm going to be out of town. Which we have to do here, too, in a couple of weeks. But I can tell you the next 3 Genre Guys, and you can tell me the next, 1 or 2 that are going to show up here. But tonight we are recording, I joked, because last week we did this amazing documentary about Drew, who does all the great posters for all the great movies, which I'd never even known about it until Lauren brought it to our attention. Well, I hate to do a genre twice in a row, but we're doing another documentary tonight. It's entitled How to Murder Your Wife. It's an instructional video with Jack Lemmon and Terry Thomas. And it's just one of the great comedies of the day, with music, by the way, by Neil Hefti, he of the famous Batman theme. And then we're going to do one of my other favorite movies. And this is one I'm so happy Lauren told me. I'd never heard of this, and he watched it and loved it. and you will too if you haven't, and that is Looker, which is written and directed by Michael Crichton, with Albert Finney, of all people, as a plastic surgeon. And these beautiful, gorgeous women come to him and say, I need plastic surgery because my nose is 1/8 of a millimeter too far to the left, and my freckle is too high, and my and what it turns out is that James Coburn, who's the bad guy, is creating this thing where they are getting perfect women to be perfect models for TV commercials that have a hypnotic element that compels you to buy the product. So that looks into a lot of futurism that has become real to some degree. And then we're also going to do all of our favorite movies, Big Trouble in Little China. So those are the next three coming. And remember, folks, I always like to repeat this because people don't realize when you, for whatever reason, and keep them coming, there are a couple of our contributors out there in chats who give away a lot of free memberships to all of our channels, but particularly to the Pro channel. And suddenly there's 30, 40, 50 new people, and they're not quite sure what that entails. One thing it entails is that you get to see the Genre Guys as a member exclusive over there. And then 3 months later, the same Genre Guys shows come here for the masses, as they say. But I always try and tell people, when you get that membership in 30 days or whatever it is, YouTube is going to plug you with, hey, do you want to renew? I don't want you to think it's us trying to get greedy, asking for your money. It's just a natural course of things that they want you to renew, and we hope you do. And that's a good thing. But anyway, the Genre Guys and this are my main things. And of course, when I can get a chance, I wasn't able to this week, but the now Tuesday show at 3 p.m. with you and Barry Place and all the good guys on T3PO. So there you go.
T3PO Live is absolutely fantastic. I love Lou's input right there. And we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff on T3PO Live. A lot of things that have happened in the last couple of days here. It's going to be a lot of fun there. Also, too, want to go ahead and Spaceship Beers. I was interviewed in another stream, pitch T3PO to their viewers. Keep up the great work. Hey, thank you so much. And hey, if you ever want to be incorporated on T3PO Live, well, go ahead and send me a message right down there at t3ponline@yahoo.com. Always willing to bring on new voices, bring on new people, give them a shot, and I think it's a more robust discussion that way.
Absolutely. Speaking of robust, we used up all our robustness for one day, and we got to go do other stuff.
Exactly.
But, thank you all for being here as always.
Yes.
And we'll see you in a week.
Absolutely. We'll see you in a week. If you haven't hit the like button yet, please hit the like button right there. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit the subscribe button as well. Hit the bell notifications if you really like us. And if you really, really like us, go ahead and share us out, as it helps us out tremendously against the YouTube algorithm. So Amnuck, Tom F., Sam Spurgeon, Spaceship Beers, Mary White, Wildman Yavin, there's so many people. Deborah, Aldous Journal, Go and Shogi, thank you so much for joining us here. We cannot wait to see you again here next week on Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you. Take care, everybody. That wasn't the right one. Come on, StreamYard. It's just being that way. Thanks, guys.